Hello and welcome, everyone. Over the past couple of days, I've been reading this book here, Perpetual Chess Improvement by Ben Johnson, and I wanted to take this video as an opportunity to kind of share my thoughts regarding this book, give a review, if you will. And I think, especially now, with New Year's just around the corner, I think it's a good time to kind of explore this book and give my thoughts about it. And I'll explain why in a little bit, but I think it'll start to make sense because a lot of what is described in this book is kind of changing the way that you approach studying chess. And so, with New Year's coming up, there might be an opportunity here for you to apply some of these very specific and kind of practical study tips into your new study program or workout, if you will. And so I think this might be a good time if you haven't already seen this book, and if, while I describe this book, it seems enticing or relevant to you, I think this might be a good time to take a look at it. So there isn't much of a format to this video. This is very unique to what I usually do. I'm just gonna kind of talk about my general opinions, maybe kind of randomly and without much order. I will start by just giving what I consider to be a summary of this book. Um, Generally speaking, the book covers chess improvement, as the name suggests. And I think if you're looking for just a study plan that someone tells you, where you do, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you do these things for these many hours, on Friday and Saturday, if you want a very specific study plan where it kind of lays exactly what you do for how many hours, this is not the book for you. Because this book, on the other hand, is more so an exploration into the differing philosophies in regards to chess studying, right? So there's a lot of questions that come up when you think about how you should allocate your time for chess, right? Do you study openings? At what rating do you study openings? Um, should you spend time with endgame studies as opposed to normal tactics? Is it still important to use physical books as opposed to, the plethora of online resources at your disposal? And what this book does is it kind of describes and explains all of those different arguments and many, many more. And it gives a summary or kind of a good faith exploration of both sides of those debates. And Ben Johnson, if you don't know, he runs the Perpetual Chess podcast. There's no one better to do this sort of book than him, because he's talked to hundreds of people regarding so many different aspects of improving your chess, and he's met so many different experiences with different perspectives. And so putting it into a book where it's essentially a kind of a compilation of the different approaches that you can take for studying chess, I think this is what this book is. And I think Ben Johnson does a great job, and he kind of certainly has the experience to produce a product like this. In fact, one of the things that he does very often in this book is quote the podcast and the guest's words into the book. And so, if you haven't seen the podcast, then this is also kind of a good way to summarize all of those episodes into one book that's kind of, continuous and smooth sailing, if you will. And so I think that, even if you have seen the podcast, it's a good way to kind of review some of the things that you may have heard in the past in various episodes. And so that's what I would basically say this book is, right? It doesn't give you a very specific guideline for what you should do exactly. It more so presents different arguments for kind of the same question. And, one of the things that Ben does in this book is that in the end of these different debates, if you will, where he kind of says, okay, one philosophy is that players under this rating should not spend time on openings. Another philosophy is that you should spend time on openings. Generally speaking, he does try to give some consensus and his own opinion, but I actually, this is sort of speculation, but I suspect that he doesn't actually do this because he necessarily wants to, but more so because he's writing a book about chess improvement. So, at some point he does need to give very direct answers. But I think if he had, the freedom to kind of write a book about whatever he wanted, it would be even more fitting for him to leave these questions open ended. Because one of the benefits of an approach like that is that you then get to, as the reader, figure out which sides of the arguments resonate with you the most. So again, we can look at one of the examples, which is, do you still need physical books as opposed to, chess base or chessable. And he gives the different arguments. Um, and at the end, he does kind of give some summaries. That's something that he does in each chapter. He gives a summary of the general takeaways. But what you'll find is that you can very easily connect to one side of the argument, right? If you're a new kid who doesn't really have the patience for books, then you're very easily going to connect with the time and the stories that he shares regarding people who have only relied on online resources. On the flip side, if you're someone who really values these books and enjoys having a nice collection of physical hard copy books, then you're going to likely resonate with the other side. And so being able to explore very important questions in regards to your studying of chess, but being able to be introduced to all of these different arguments, and then kind of making your own mind based on your own preferences, I think is where this book really shines. Because any person, any titled player or strong player or experienced player can just tell you what to do, right? They can tell you, read this book, this book, this book, do this puzzle on this day, and there's many of those resources online if that's what you want. But where this book shines is giving you the option, right? Presenting the arguments in the most appealing ways that they can be presented, with many stories, many anecdotes of successful players who have climbed the ranks based on these different philosophies, and giving you, the reader, the opportunity to connect with the different sides that seem appealing. And he does also kind of mention this very straightforwardly, right? Like in many of the chapters, the concluding thoughts are like, you don't really need to study openings if you're under this rating, or you don't need to study endgame studies if you're, in general, if you're looking solely for improvement. But if these are things that are appealing to you specifically, if that's something that excites you, go for it, right? At the end of the day, we're here to have fun as well. And so I think that he does kind of give the reader a sense of agency in regard to how they want to approach their studying, and I think generally it's a very inspiring book where you can kind of take the lessons of many different people. I mean, he mentions dozens upon dozens of different title players and successful stories of improvement, and you can kind of take bits and parts from different areas and compile your own study plan that fits you. So, with that big picture out of the way, I want to jump into a bit more of the specifics of what you'll find in this book. And so essentially, what Ben advocates for are four different main pillars that build up your study schedule, right? And this includes playing games, that's very important, analyzing those games, working on your tactics and your calculation. And then the fourth one is kind of this idea of having a community around you that can support you in your efforts. And he very much advocates for all four of these parts. He obviously expands on them very deeply, but these are four very specific ideas that you get from this book. Aside from that, again, the majority of the book just talks about different ways that you could potentially spend your time, right? And so I'll list a couple of the different debates. Earlier, we talked about kind of the opening and the idea of whether you should spend time on endgame studies, but there are many other things that he talks about. So one of the ideas is, should you play online? Or, is it okay to play online only? Or should you very much focus on also getting over the board experience? Another idea that he talks about is how important is it to practice your blindfold skills or your visualization skills. Um, another point that he mentions very specifically is, how should you use the online resources at your disposal, right? Whether that be chess.com or Elite Chess or ChessBase, how should you exactly spend your time with those resources, and how do those different resources really compare between one another? And so you can get an idea that this builds overall a large picture for what you can do in regards to studying chess. And again, that's kind of what this book aims at doing. But one of the very nice side benefits of this is that the book is incredibly inspiring. This is what I found to be true. He shares the stories of many people who have used these different approaches to improve their chess. And these experiences vary greatly, but one of the nice things is that they tend to be very positive and very exciting and inspiring to a player who is ambitious and wants to improve. at chess like myself. And so, I'll read one of the quotes that I thought was particularly interesting because it's also a perspective I haven't really thought about before. So this is actually a quote by Neil Bruce, who is a chess enthusiast who writes, who actually talks on a podcast with with the Chess Dojo, and he essentially says this: some days I don't even want to do chess training. If you're an athlete or committed to something, you do it whether you feel like it or not. And to me, it's not even a choice. It's who I am. It's part of my identity. I am a chess player and I train. And so I think that people overestimate motivations and they overestimate fun and they underestimate the will to simply get better. Now, this comes in the part of the book where Ben talks about how chess is also largely your identity, right? And this comes in the form of like the openings that you choose, but greatly it's just the thing that is a massive passion for you, and it's something that if you're a professional or you're a very ambitious player, this is something that is ingrained in you. And that was kind of a perspective that I thought, and that chapter in general, I thought was super kind of inspiring, and again, something I haven't really considered before. And the book is just filled with quotes like that from other sides. That quote is very kind of disciplined and, let's say, extreme in regards to like, you have to do this. He also mentions many people who were a lot more relaxed in regards to their approach of chess. He also says, for example, that all of the recommendations he gives are just recommendations, and at the end of the day, the goal here is to have fun. And so, if openings are something that he recommends against studying for very lower rated players, if that's something that excites you, then do it anyways, right? So he shares these various perspectives, and I think regardless of where you are right now, you're going to get a clash of ideas with people who maybe have different philosophies regarding what chess means to them, and how they go about improving. And so I think regardless of the type of player you are, there is a lot for you to learn in this book, and indeed I think this book is quite inspiring in that regard. Now, there's a couple of kind of more things that I want to touch. First of all, the target audience. I just kind of explained what this book does, and so if that appeals you, then that's probably a target audience for you. Also, someone who right now maybe is in a plateau or doesn't have a specific study plan and feels like they're motivated to get back into it. This book is perfect for that, right? I mean, it really will send you in the right direction, especially with New Year's coming up. This is kind of what I hinted upon earlier. If you want to start 2024 off strong in regards to your chess plan, then this book I think is a very good read in the coming weeks before the new year. Um, Now, one final thing about the target audience. This does generally appeal to kind of more adult learners. I think his podcast in general has that sort of vibe to it, where it's a lot about people who are no longer in their youth and kind of have other responsibilities that they have to take care of, and they need to balance chess improvement with that. And so, if you're a younger person, that might not seem very suitable, but I actually found that this book does a good job of applying to everyone. There are specific moments, like there was a chapter where he talked about how you need to go about playing against young kids right now, and kind of the difference in the mindset of kids who have all these, quick tools at their disposal, and more older adults, and kind of how that difference manifests on the actual chessboard. And that does kind of, uh, play more useful to someone who is of an older generation. But the general concepts in this book and the vast majority of quotes or informations, I think, are very wide applicable to all ages, and kind of all players. And so I think the target audience is mostly based on whether you feel comfortable or happy right now with how your chess improvement journey is going, and whether you feel like you want to explore some alternative options that you might have in regards to improving at chess. Um, a final note that I'll mention is that this book is not like most chess books. It doesn't have, many games or tactics or things that would force you to have a physical board out. This is just, it reads like a novel, right? I mean, it just has mostly words. Obviously, the type of book that it is logical to have mostly words, and therefore, it can be read very easily, right, at the comfort of your bed. You don't need to use a lot of brain power to read through this book. I actually read this book, like maybe 70% of the book, a very big majority of the book, on a plane ride that was, just over 6 hours. And so it's not a book that I think when people think of chess books, they often think of a massive commitment that they're going to have to carve out so many hours of their day for many, many months in order to get even, part of the book done. This is a book that, you can finish in just a matter of days. And so if that is something that maybe was on your mind, hopefully that helps clarify a bit. And so with that final statement, I think I will mostly conclude this video. I am happy to answer any questions you have about this book. There were obviously many more details I could have shared. I could have gone in a bit more deep about certain chapters. But if you have very specific questions about maybe your situation and whether or not this book would benefit you, then definitely let me know in the comment section. Generally, I think this is a worthwhile investment for most people. We kind of talked about the target audience before, but just to reiterate, if you're someone who wants a bit more direction, but kind of a bigger picture of the different ways in which you can utilize the tools at your disposal to improve at chess, then I think this is a great book. And as I've mentioned, there's not really better people to write a book like this than Ben Johnson. So thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like this video if you learned something new from it. Write down below any questions you have about this book or about, anything related to chess in general. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.